Subscribe to the channel now and get new stories every day. Let's start right now. Carmen used to feel butterflies in her stomach every time she saw Noah walk through the door. For years, she believed with all her heart that she loved him, that no matter what life threw at them, they'd stand side by side. Even as time eroded the early glow of their marriage, she convinced herself their bond was unbreakable. Yet, in a moment of weakness, she let her guard down with someone else. They had two small children, twins Lucas and Sierra, who were their pride and joy. Carmen told herself she could never break up their family, so when she found herself growing too close to a coworker, Ethan, she tried to silence the flutter in her chest and the spark in her eyes whenever he was near. But it happened anyway, a single night of surrender that turned into weeks of hiding. She convinced herself, I still love Noah, I'm just caught in a momentary fantasy. Each day, she'd drive home from work rehearsing ways to tell Ethan they needed to end it. Yet every time he texted, her heart raced with guilt-laced excitement. She would slip into secrecy mode, deleting calls, erasing texts, sneaking away for coffee errands. She believed if no one ever learned the truth, they could go on as before. But secrets have a way of surfacing. One evening, Carmen left her phone on the kitchen counter. Noah entered the room to grab a glass of water, noticing it buzzing with a message preview from Ethan. Missing you tonight. Why don't you come by? A spike of dread shot through Noah. Usually he trusted his wife without question, but her distant demeanor these past months had prompted suspicions he tried to ignore. Now seeing the flirtatious tone in a text from a man he'd never heard her mention, his heart sank. Carmen walked in, saw Noah holding her phone, and froze. Noah, she whispered, fear etched on her face. He stared at her with dismay. Who's Ethan, Carmen? She stammered, tears flooding her eyes. He's a colleague. It's not what you think. What do I think? He asked, voice trembling. That my wife's been lying to me. That's exactly what this looks like. She reached out, panicked. I love you. I swear I do. It just happened. I never wanted to hurt you. His expression hardened, though heartbreak flickered in his eyes. You can sneaking around and you say you love me? How could you do this? Carmen's tears spilled over. It was a mistake. I never stopped loving you. You, me, the kids. We're everything I want in the world. Noah closed his eyes for a moment, wrestling with rage and sorrow. Part of him wanted to walk out right then. But Lucas and Sierra, only 6 years old, needed stability. He thought of them at bedtime, reading stories together, their bright smiles. He couldn't shatter that overnight. Slowly, he exhaled. For now I'm staying, he said quietly, because of our children. But I won't forget this. Their life took on an uneasy routine. They never spoke of Ethan again, but the atmosphere in the house turned cold. Carmen tried everything. Overly cheerful breakfasts, date-night suggestions, but Noah's eyes no longer held the warmth she once knew. She catch him gazing at the twins with tenderness, then turning to her with a guarded expression. For the next decade, they kept up the semblance of a normal family. Lucas and Sierra grew into bright, sporty teenagers who believed their parents were simply busier than before. Carmen told herself Noah would eventually forgive her, that he'd see she'd never repeated the mistake. She ended things with Ethan quickly, yet the damage was done. Carmen found small glimmers of hope whenever Noah cooperated on family events, vacations, birthdays, weekend barbecues. He never said it out loud, but she knew he was staying for the twins' sake, waiting until they were old enough to handle the truth of a broken marriage. Every so often, she'd attempt to break the ice. Noah, maybe we can talk. Go to counseling? She'd suggest softly at night. He'd give her a weary glance. I'm here for the kids, he'd murmur. But that doesn't change the past. She'd sigh, tears stinging her eyes, whispering, I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. He'd say nothing and switch off the lamp. When Lucas and Sierra turned 16, Carmen felt both relief and dread. The kids were near adulthood, old enough to sense the tension that had stained their parents' marriage for years. They began asking subtle questions. Mom, why does Dad sleep in the guest room sometimes? Or Dad, are you and Mom okay? On a cool autumn morning, Carmen returned from grocery shopping to find Noah packing a suitcase in their bedroom. Her heart lurched. They locked eyes, the finality in his expression unmistakable. Where are you going? She asked, voice trembling. He closed the suitcase. I can't do this anymore. The twins are old enough. I've found a place of my own. She choked on the wave of panic. But where aren't we? Can't we still fix it? His gaze flicked to the old photo on the dresser. Their wedding day, full of bright smiles and naive optimism. I can't forget your betrayal, Carmen, he said softly. I tried. I stayed for the kids, but I never forgave you in my heart. Tears slicked down her cheeks. But I love you, she whispered, the same line she repeated for 10 years. He nodded, picking up his suitcase. And I love you too, once. But that day, something broke. I'm sorry. She saw it then. The sadness, yes, but also a quiet resolution. Is there someone else? She asked, trembling. He hesitated. I met someone, recently. We haven't crossed any lines until now, but I feel alive with her in a way I haven't felt in years. I don't want to hide that. Not anymore. Carmen pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. It felt surreal, a karmic echo of her own betrayal. He brushed past her gently, no anger now, just a hollow acceptance. The AFT Yeramaith. Lucas and Sierra were shocked. They asked their father why he was leaving, and Noah, choosing honesty, explained in broad terms that Mom hurt me a long time ago and I couldn't move past it. Carmen could see the heartbreak in her kids' eyes, the confusion that would haunt them for years. She wanted to defend herself but felt she had no right. She'd done this all those years ago, sparking the slow fuse that led to this explosion of sorrow. Noah moved into a rented condo across town, soon inviting the kids to meet his new partner, Emily, a warm, understanding woman who tried her best not to replace Carmen, but to offer a gentle presence. The twins, though hurt and angry, gradually accepted the new reality, flipping back and forth between homes. Carmen, meanwhile, stayed alone in the big family house, mourning the final collapse of a marriage she'd once cherished, swamped by regret. Sometimes she remembered how she justified her affair. I love him, but I just made a small mistake. He'll never know. Now she realized how naive that was. The truth had stained their marriage from within, twisting every interaction they'd shared for a decade. And in the end, Noah hadn't forgiven. He had only delayed the inevitable for the sake of the children. One evening, months after Noah left, Carmen stood in the quiet living room, gazing at pictures of them as a young couple on a camping trip. Her arms around him, huge grins on their faces. She remembered thinking back then that love could conquer anything, that a single lapse in judgment couldn't demolish a lifetime of devotion. She was wrong. Love demands honesty, trust, and consistent care. A single breach can fester, no matter how many apologies follow. She dialed Noah's number, wanting to ask how he was, maybe see if there was any path to redemption. But as his phone rang, her courage dissolved. She hung up. He had chosen his path. And so had she years ago when she first betrayed him. Now they both lived with the consequences. Lucas and Sierra adapted to the new arrangement, forging a cautious acceptance of their parents' separate lives. Carmen poured her energy into being a better mother, ensuring they felt loved and safe. Whenever she glimpsed them chatting with Noah's new partner, she felt a pang of jealousy, yet recognized that at least they had some version of a stable father figure. She learned to live with the tension of loving him still, but knowing he would never come back. Many stories end with a clean break or a grand reconciliation, but real life is rarely that tidy. Carmen continued her days in that old house, occasionally venturing out, trying to rebuild a semblance of a social life, though guilt and shame weighed on her. She answered occasional phone calls from Noah about logistics for the children's birthdays or holidays. They spoke politely, never truly discussing the wound that lingered between them. She accepted that the man she once loved, whom she still loved in her own regretful way, was building a new family, one she would never be part of. And that, in the end, was the hardest lesson. Love, once broken, doesn't always heal, no matter how long you wait or how many tears you shed. Thus, Carmen's secret, once hidden so neatly, led her down the lonely path she now walked. She told herself she'd do anything to turn back time, to make different choices. But time, relentless and indifferent, moved forward, leaving her to dwell on what might have been had she chosen honesty and fidelity over a betrayal she convinced herself was harmless. Now she lived alone, cherishing the moments with her grown children, seeing them flourish despite the fractured family dynamic. She put on a brave face each day, carrying the quiet ache of her past mistake. Because sometimes simply learning to live with regret is all that remains when forgiveness no longer dwells on the horizon.